Most of us have this primal, hardwired fear of being completely alone in the dark. We just naturally avoid it. But for this explainer, we kind of need to flip that perspective. Because for a young guy named Neil Moss, the dark wasn't a fear at all. It was his absolute passion. Today, we're diving into a deeply emotional, honestly haunting survival story. It's going to force us to really look at the extreme limits of human endurance and that chilling silence that follows when all hope just fades away. So let's go back to March 22nd, 1959. Neil Moss enters Peak Cavern over in the UK. His goal was pretty straightforward. He was aiming to explore a totally uncharted passage deep inside the cave system. But here is the heartbreaking reality. He entered aiming to explore, but he never walked out. What started off as this exciting exploration instantly turned into a grueling, incredibly agonizing test of endurance. And to put this into perspective, Neil was just 20 years old that day. Now, don't get me wrong, he wasn't some reckless novice. He was actually an experienced caver, but still, being so young and facing such an incredibly hostile, unforgiving underground environment, that is a monumental challenge for absolutely anyone. Now, Peak Cavern had this notorious section known as the Squeeze, and it is exactly what it sounds like, a fiercely tight, highly restrictive passage. Neil actually had to descend into this narrow, vertical chimney headfirst. Just take a second and really try to picture that claustrophobic setting. He's totally relying on his physical training and his caving experience, basically navigating his way down inch by agonizing inch. For a while, he was actually making steady progress. But then, well, in one terrifying instant, absolutely everything changed. As he shifted his weight, he accidentally disturbed a massive boulder. It shifted and it wedged itself firmly right against his chest. Just like that, Neil was completely pinned. I mean, he had zero room to move and, way worse, no room to even breathe properly. His companions watching realized almost instantly that this wasn't just a minor hiccup. They were suddenly in a desperate life-or-death race against time. So over the next 12 hours, this totally frantic multi-agency rescue attempt kicked into gear. But man, the environment was just actively working against them. You see, the air in that narrow shaft was desperately thin, and it was filled with dangerously high levels of carbon dioxide. It was almost like the cave itself was stealing Neil's energy, making every single breath he took just a monumental, exhausting struggle. Through this tiny, narrow gap, his friends are desperately speaking to him, right? They're encouraging him, doing anything they can to keep his spirit alive while his oxygen levels keep dropping. During those early hours, he was actually managing coherent sentences, but slowly, inevitably, that degraded into slurred speech. By hours 9 through 11, all his friends could hear were these fragmented, desperate whimpers. And then at hour 12, the silence began. And this is where the rescuers hit a truly crushing realization. To physically free Neil from that impossibly tight vertical chimney, they estimated they would have had to dig through solid rock for days. And that was a luxury Neil simply did not have. Between the toxic air and the literal compression on his chest, time had already run out. Ultimately, the rescue teams had to make an absolutely agonizing decision, a decision no one ever wants to make. They had to leave him there. Neil Moss remains in that shaft to this very day, literally a permanent part of the earth he loves so much. It's such a haunting conclusion, and honestly, it's a tragedy that has deeply haunted the entire caving community ever since. The sheer immobility of the earth claimed him, leaving him exactly where his passion had led him. The story of Neil Moss really forces us to look inward. So, the next time you feel a little ping of claustrophobia, maybe you're in a crowded elevator or a really tight room, remember Neil. Remember that narrow, vertical chimney in Peak Cavern. Because sometimes the absolute greatest dangers aren't the ones that surprise us, right? They're the ones we knowingly, willingly choose to walk right into in pursuit of our passions. So, what dangers are you willing to face?